Well, hello there, my fellow freedom lover. Just couldn't get enough, could ya? You probably saw in the title that this is a part 2, so for those of you who haven't seen the first part, here's a quick recap. Cyrodiil has decided that empires are for suckers, and they'd like the good old US of A to come in and give them a taste of that oh-so-coveted democracy. Up for election are the Republican nominee, Archmage Traven, and the Democrat nominee, Countess Narina Carvane. Each city will hold its own election, where the voting populace will vote on which candidate they want to win the leadership. After that, whoever wins the city's election will receive that city's electoral votes. Whoever has the most electoral votes after all the elections have been completed wins the presidency. If that brief description has piqued your interest, the link to part 1 is in the description. Today, we're getting our hands dirty. We're diving headfirst into the election, traveling from city to city, settlement to settlement, to determine who will be the first ever president of Cyrodiil.
No!
Conducting a democratic election in a non-democratic video game is obviously a pretty big undertaking. As such, let's talk about how the fuck we're gonna do this. We'll be conducting a survey of each of the cities in Cyrodiil to see which ones will vote for what candidate. Because there's not much that would give away what each NPC feels about the hypothetical election, some of the determinations we make will be based on who the person that we're talking to is.
Yes, I know. Stereotypes are bad.
But this is going to be our best way of determining the voting preferences of many of Cyrodiil's citizens. We're about to stereotype the shit out of some mother. There are a lot of people in each city, and because I'm not a masochist, we'll be speaking with 10 NPCs from each region. The 10 NPCs selected will be based off the demographic breakdown of said region. So if Brazil's regional population is a 60-40 male-female split, we'll be speaking to 6 men and 4 women, roughly. Now apply that same logic to race and ta-da, we've got our sample. Okay, so now it's finally time to talk about the elephant in the room. The Electoral College. Now, for those of you outside the US, and even for those of you inside the US that went to public school, the Electoral College acts as a pool of votes for an individual region based on population. The people in the regions vote, and whichever candidate wins that election wins that particular region's electoral votes. Is it perfect? Fuck no, it's not. But have we come up with anything better? We sure haven't. Like I've said before, whatever the way Freedom Land does it is how Cyrodiil does it. Here are some lists for a quick reminder on the values that we've applied to both candidates. Going forward, we'll be using this to extrapolate policies that each candidate would enact upon gaining office. First up, we're gonna take a look at Skingrad. Oh boy, Skingrad. I think this city might have the buggiest NPCs in the entire game. I shit you not, out of the initial selection sample, I'm convinced that a large portion of them are just fucking dead. It doesn't help that trying to navigate this admittedly small city makes my head hurt. So let's get this out of the way and move on to somewhere a bit more straightforward. That being said, let's take a look at the demographics of the people crazy enough to live in and around this city. As you can see, the population here is predominantly imperial. Get ready for that, because that's actually most cities in Cyrodiil. Who'd thunk? We have a gender breakdown that is quite literally 2/3 male and 1/3 female, with a population of about 52 people in the city and the surrounding settlements, bringing that up to 61. We're going to give Skingrad a total of 8 electoral votes. All that in mind, let's take a look at our voting sample. Here, we've got a member of the Fighters Guild. I think it's pretty safe to say that as a general rule of thumb, if someone is primarily a martial fighter, they're not going to be too thrilled with the emphasis that society would place on magic under Traven. That said, Faddis here used to be a member of the Imperial Reserve, so he likely respects what would be an increased Imperial presence, regardless of whether or not they're shooting magic out of their hands. Also, if you ask him about Daedric Shrines, he makes it pretty clear that he's not too fond of Daedra or their worshippers, going pretty firmly against Narina's views on cultural outreach. Dude is straight afraid of them. I don't think reaching out to them is going to go over very well with him. I'm gonna give the first vote of this video to Traven. Right off the bat, she takes a hardline stance when asked about the Grey Fox, and then talks shit on the beggars. Already off to a rough start. She also explicitly says there are types of people that she will reject from her place of business. I think this lines up nicely with with Traven's hypothetical acts that make it more difficult for riffraff to muck up the place. Plus the whole poor people thing. I think that we can give this vote to Traven. Here we have a devout member of the church who is very concerned about the massacre that happened in the Church of Dibella. Understandably so. In Elder Scrolls lore, magic is directly linked to the divine. No other real interpretation of it. Magica literally comes from the Arbis, which is where the Aedra are from. I think the link to magic makes a vote for Traven a pretty safe bet. And religiousness generally tends to skew you to the right, just how it is. As stated in my last video, I highly doubt that every member of the Mages Guild or Arcane University would vote for Traven. Yeah, I'm actually not so sure about that. Airthor here seems to not only respect Traven, but seems to be a pretty big fanboy of the Mages Guild in general. I bet he thinks magic is cool. And for that, we love him. Pretty safe bet that he'd vote for Traven. Going out to the nearby village of Brindleholm, let's see what Estante here thinks.
Imps. I hate them. Little buggers flitting around, tossing fireballs at you.
Okay, so that's basically verbatim one of the things Traven is seeking to combat. Aja here doesn't give much away in regards to her personal opinions, other than to say that she likes the Two Sisters Lodge, and that the two owners are very good people. This tells me that she is proud to support women in their endeavors. Because of that, we're gonna give this vote to Narina. Haha, wow, a Nord that's a drunkard. Who'd ever expect it? Only difference is, this time, this Nord is a woman. Bethesda, smashing gender stereotypes since 2006. We're gonna give her vote to Narina for being so well liked by the Nords in Bruma. Corpse fucker. Corpse fuck. Something tells me she's huge on individual liberties and freedoms. Narina, a high elf living in the basement of an inn, learned alchemist, and seems to like exploration, what with the elixirs that he's constantly hawking. Based on this, I think we can assume that he would vote for Traven. Immediately pointed out my character was a marksman and offered training. Going forward, unless someone says or does something to the contrary, I'm going to broadly assume most people that use traditional forms of combat aren't gonna vote for Traven. So Shamir here votes for Miss Carvane. Okay, so that brings the total for Skingrad to 6 votes for Traven and 4 for Narina. I believe that means that Traven wins Skingrad's 8 electoral votes and the first votes of the election. This is just one city though, and we've got plenty more to look at. Next up is the city that Countess Narina calls home, Bruma. Unsurprisingly, the Nordic population here is the largest, but there are an unsurprising amount of Imperials here as well, with Bretons and High Elves being the next highest in numbers. Bruma skews ever so slightly more female than Skingrad, but it's still basically a 2/3 ratio. Now, it would be easy for me to just stand here and tell you that Narina is going to win Bruma, but that's boring, and you came here for data, so let's peek in. There are 50 people in Bruma, but the area it covers, and all the settlements that involves, brings that up to 70 people. With all that, we can give Bruma 9 electoral votes.
I'm Snar, the cook.
Ol Snar here seems to quite like being an Ord and Bruma itself. Pretty easy to give this one to Narina. Literally the steward to the Countess. She seems to quite like her job, and I imagine that if Narina gets the presidency, Vara's status will go up as well. Again, gonna give this one to Narina. I promise things are about to shake up. Bolinaro is a high elf, and much like other Altmer, he thinks quite highly of himself. He doesn't really care for Bruma, and seems remiss that he's been assigned to the Bruma Mages Guild Hall. Something tells me that he wouldn't particularly want to vote for someone that runs a place he hates. Plus, he seems to quite like the Mages Guild despite his positioning, and seems to speak reverently towards Traven. First vote for Traven in Bruma. Let's see if he can't get some more. Edla here is a woman that seems like she wants more from life, but has resigned herself to her life in Bruma with her lazy sack of shit husband. While she is a Nord, she doesn't seem to care either way about living so close to Skyrim. She seems like a very contrarian person, and even though her husband isn't a part of this, he just exudes a feeling of, you can't make me do shit. I think Edla here would vote for Traven. Controversial pick, but I genuinely feel like she'd do it just to see if things got more interesting around Bruma if the Countess lost. We have here a real salt of the earth kind of guy. Real pull you up by your bootstraps person. He's an Imperial too, so I'd imagine he wouldn't have too many cultural ties to Bruma or Nordic culture. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that he'd think highly of Traven's values of self-reliance. Traven.
I've never seen my lady so happy. You've done well.
Simp. Narina. She is a big fan of Bruma in general and secretly shares Countess Carvane's love of Akaviri artifacts. Not only does this exhibit a similar value in respecting and learning about other cultures, it's simply human nature to side with people who share your interests. Another one for Narina. Pretty straightforward kind of orc guy.
Orc guy.
Not much to him off the rip other than he's a fighter, and we can assume he wouldn't like the martial skills being culturally and societally shifted more towards magical ones. Narina. Right Wind is an Argonian member of the Fighters Guild, so that means he has no ties to Bruma and directly pitches the Fighters Guild to you as something you can join to see the world. The enthusiasm he shows for seemingly meeting other cultures and broadening your horizons places him firmly in line with Narina's values of cultures being stronger together and showing respect toward one another. Plus, he's a fighter, so according to the rules, he likely wouldn't vote for Traven. I think he's a safe bet for Narina here. The newly appointed healer at Castle Bruma, even though he admits he's better at making your flesh explode than mending it together. Being so newly appointed, he does not have any strong ties to Narina and seems to lament that he's no longer at the university. Further, while someone like Ivara would benefit from Narina becoming president, I don't think Gan is in the same boat. In fact, he stands to benefit more from Traven being elected president due to his reforms regarding the status of magic within Cyrodiil. So that is one more for Traven. What did I tell you? I am absolutely shocked. Wouldn't you know it, Narina has won Bruma. And with that, she also wins the 9 electoral votes that come with that victory. Anvil might be the furthest city away from the Imperial City, and as such, likely feels somewhat distant from the overarching policies and whatnot from the city. They're a port city, which brings quite a few interesting characters around, including traveling merchants and pirates. In turn, the people have a more bohemian mindset, and it shows in the culture of the city. Anvil has 71 people within its walls, with only 5 more people in the surrounding settlements. So they're gonna get 9 electoral votes for this election. Here, we have a wood elf in a relationship with a human. While this isn't so uncommon across Tamriel, I think this shows a willingness to bridge cultures, which, as has been established, is a page right out of Narina Carvane's book. It's a shame, but she is the target of a lot of racism because of her husband being a human. A leader that espouses the importance of understanding other cultures as well as personal respect and dignity, it wouldn't be outlandish in the slightest to assume this resonates with Hasithil as well. Narina gets the first vote from Anvil, our wood elf friend with the imp.
It's you. Hi.
Well, fuck you too. Like a lot of members of the Mages Guild, he does seem to be a big fan of Traven, especially since it seems like he enjoyed working under him while Traven was the head of the Anvil Mages Guild. Pretty easy vote for Traven here. This guy seems like a bit of a dumbass, what with the misspelling on his store name and all. And just talking to him, I believe that Narina would appeal to him the most, but not directly because of his intelligence, or lack thereof. Stupid people don't have a stereotypical political leaning, believe it or not. I think that Narina would appeal to him more than Traven just because of how smart Traven is. I think it would be off-putting to someone who has trouble putting their shoes on the right feet in the morning. So his dumbness affects who he'd vote for, but not because stupid people are more attracted to democratic ideals. He just doesn't want to be a simpleton in a culture that has no room for it. Next up is a Redguard woman named Isolde. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm here to tally the vote for the upcoming election.
Only the chosen will survive.
Well, I can honestly say that I did not expect that, but, I don't think this counts. Can, someone help me clean this up?
Me children will thank you for your help.
This guy sure does like his handouts. Narina. Here, we have an Imperial who hates how lazy everyone is. She will complain about the sailors and how rowdy they are, and she's a very no-nonsense type of person. Traven's policies that propagate personal responsibility would be right up her alley, which would include lessening of government handouts and the implementation of a society that values hard work. Something Traven definitely will implement since he will be doing more for the institutions across Cyrodiil. Another vote for Traven. Alright, we're gonna stoop to stereotypes here. Vigdis is a Nord and likely has connections to Bruma because of this. That combined with the fact that she's a member of the Fighters Guild, I think that we can safely give this one to Narina. Here we have the local smith, who just so happens to be a dark elf. Being a dark elf, I think it is safe to say that he is an immigrant from Morrowind, or at least a descendant of immigrants from the region. That, coupled with the fact that if magic begins to take the place of traditional sword and shield combat, he'd lose a shit ton of business being a smith and all. I think it's in his best interest, and in line with his likely values, to vote for Narina. She gets one more. So this one kind of surprised me, and I think I'm finding that orcs don't fall into stereotypes of their race as much as people might think they do. While his appearance says he might be the fighting type, he's actually quite laid back. Talking to him about the Prophet and Anvil reveal that he thinks Cyrodiil would benefit from a holy knight, and actively wishes something like that would come about. While they may not be holy, the battle mages that Traven would likely at least partially grant his wish for someone with power taking authority back over the land. Gorgo here is one of the few voters in this town that we can give to Traven. A pirate with a funny name. Hauls ropes faster is lucky he's even being considered a citizen of Anvil, let alone getting a vote. Talking to him reveals that he's actually a pretty considerate soul, who doesn't seem to care much about what people say about him. Being an Argonian from Blackmarsh, I think the cultural outreach Narina wants would go over well with him, since Argonians are amongst the most poorly understood of Tamriel's races. Further, Traven's economic policies would likely include a cracking down on piracy, so that would likely deter him from voting for him as well. And the last vote for Anvil goes to Narina. So damn, Narina pretty handily won Anvil, which I find a little surprising. I assumed there would be more people here like Asti and Ventius. Maybe the selection chosen is not indicative of the majority of the population, but that's just how some elections go. That said, I do think that Anvil is a safe bet for Narina, regardless of the population chosen for this tally. Coral. What can be said about Coral that hasn't already been said? Probably not much. There ain't a lot going on here. With a voting population of about 68 in the city and settlements around it, a 2/3 ratio between men and women, and an imperial population that completely eclipses the next highest race, Bretons, this is pretty similar to many of the other cities in Cyrodiil. Because of this, they'll be receiving 8 electoral votes. He's not hiding too well he's a member of the Thieves Guild, and you know who hates thieves the most? Collectors of priceless artifacts. One of Narina's policies would definitely be to rout out the Thieves Guild and send them all to prison. While a lot of people tend to vote against their best interests, I'm not gonna make an illogical leap here. Pretty solid vote for Traven. From what she says, it seems like she has a lot of faith in the counts, specifically the Count of Coral, but I think we can extrapolate that a little to also include other counts, especially since Narina has proven herself to be an effective leader that people like. I think for that alone, we can chalk this vote up to Narina. As a likely immigrant from Morrowind, I think that Narina's policies of cultural outreach would go over well with him. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not even gonna attempt his fucking name. Narina.
If I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times, I've never been to Cyrodiil.
Ugh, look at this drunkard. I'm not sure how he got selected to be on this list, but straight up, I think this might be our first citizen we've come across that I can confidently say just would not vote. Isolde and Anvil might not have counted because she's dead, but Reynald is very much alive and very much would not care. I'm not even so sure he'd know an election was happening. Alright, so let's take a stroll through the countryside around Coral and visit one of the nearby villages.
My grandfather built this place, not that it's any of your business. We've been down, but we got plans to bring back the good old days. You'll see.
Well, shit, son, my grandpappy built this here hovel, and I'm gonna die in this here hovel. Alright, shit, I think we should leave these freaks alone. One might think this weirdo cult village would vote for Traven based on previous assumptions and the way that they behave. But you know what? Something tells me these people are very into their personal freedoms and want to be left alone to do as they please. Also, something tells me they would be viewed as a vulnerable population, and a democratic government would protect their way of life. Might be a hot take, but I think Moslin here would pretty easily vote for Narina. She's an Argonian with a daughter that she's very proud of. She's also a business owner that she largely operates on her own. Because of that, Narina's leadership of Bruma as a single woman would probably resonate well with her. She's also willing to do business with the freaks in Hactor. Narina. Got him here. Gatum. Got him. Whatever. Here very much wants more guard protection. While Narina definitely won't be soft on the justice aspect of the law, Traven's battle mages are just unmatched in terms of protection. Another one for Traven. We've got a bit of a rare one here. While most people wouldn't think of orcs as mages, Orag here is quite learned in some pretty high-level magical spells. She's also a very pious woman, but will still take the time to teach you new spells if you ask her. So she's proven to be quite dedicated, and I highly doubt she takes her magical affinity for granted or doesn't think too much on it. Because of this, I think she'd quite like Traven's institution of magical teachings and understandings across Cyrodiil, giving this one to Traven. A well-read business owner. Very likely that being a business owner sways her more towards Traven, but with the stronger economic policies. The fact that she's well-read might sway her toward Narina, as Narina is also a very learned woman. But I am going to make the executive decision here to mark her as a vote for Traven. I think it could be argued that her well-learnedness could go either way, since Traven is also the head of the Arcane University. I think that this, coupled with the economic policies she'll favor as a business owner, tip the scales. Traven. Alright, let's be real. He's in the Mages Guild. He doesn't seem to outwardly like Traven. I bet my ass he'd vote for him. Okay, so even despite the fact that Reynald Germain isn't going to vote, Traven still wins the majority here, and the 8 electoral votes that come with it. Alright, so that's all the cities we'll be looking at today, so I think that means we can tally up the votes. With a win in Coral and Skingrad, Traven is sitting at 16 electoral votes. Winning Bruma and Anvil, Countess Narina Carvane is in the lead with 18 electoral votes. So this just goes to show, you can win the same amount of cities, but still have a difference in votes. That's kind of the point. But it is still anyone's election. There are still a ton of votes to tally, and I think we all know that elections can turn at the last minute. So what's next? I'm sure you noticed that we didn't travel to every city in Cyrodiil today. In the next video, we'll be doing much of the same we did in this, but in the remaining cities. Then, it'll be time to see how the Imperial City will vote, cause there's a shitload of people there. After we get all that, we'll make one more video, where all the votes get tallied up, and we take a look at Cyrodiil during their first election night. There'll be live broadcast, boots on the ground journalism, and a whole hell of a lot of chaos. I can't think of an election night going any other way, and Cyrodiil is getting themselves ready for it. Kvatch about to be a footnote in the destruction we're about to see. Or hell, maybe this will be civil for the first time ever. It is their first time ever, so that will remain to be seen. Leave a like if you liked this video, and remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on the upcoming videos. Tell me in the comments below which way you think this is gonna go, or anything you might like me to take a look at in the next videos. All of that goes a really long way in helping the channel grow, and I read and reply to all of your comments. I am on the home stretch to hit my goal of 500 subs by the end of the year, and thanks to everyone here, you are helping me smash that goal out of the park. Stick around, because next time we're finishing up our vote tally in the cities. You definitely don't want to miss the results of Tamriel's historic first election. Maybe historically violent. With all that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Are you looking at my testicles, Nerevar?